I have no problem with folks saying Obama cares. I do care.
Yes, he cares about being a communist and stealing your money and redistributing wealth and putting all of your health care for your entire family in the hands of the government so they can take it away at any time, just like under authoritarian regimes. They also want to take away your firearms, just like they do under authoritarian regimes. And they've whipped out the old Russian playbook again, where they accuse you of being guilty of everything that they know they are guilty of in real time. A little cat scratch fever says an Obamacare issue. I think cat scratch fever is covered by Obamacare, isn't it? Isn't everything covered by Obamacare? Well, a very good Tuesday to you, and welcome back once again. We continue to be reached at 888-630-9625. And I gotta tell you, there's this stuff started popping, and I'm sorry I didn't see it yesterday, and I'm going to confess that I didn't see it until after I wrapped up the radio show yesterday. There was a lot going on and everything, you know. But the Washington Post had an editorial. And in their editorial, buried deep inside of the editorial, they're talking about the government shutdown, and why is the government shutting down? Why did Schumer shut the government down? Why are the Democrats shutting the government down and the media lying about it? Because they're bootlicks for the Democrat Party, and they're not honest people, and they're not journalists, and they're not truth tellers or truth seekers. They're Democrats, and that means that they're lefties, and that they're here to take over and take your rights away and steal as much from you as they possibly can, money and property and rights and everything else, and your children, and turn your boys into girls and your girls into boys. But is that covered by Obamacare, Michael? Is that whole gender thing covered by Obama? But the amazing story from the Democrats at the Washington Post, buried in the story, I spotted this yesterday, and others did too. The Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable. And it's a throwaway line, many paragraphs into their editorial. And the world saw it and said, well, wait a minute. But you guys told us for 15 years it was the greatest thing ever. And now you just throw out very blithely, very casually, that the Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable. And that's why the government shut down, because the Democrats are here to steal another $1 trillion to fund their harebrained government takeover of health care, which is what people like me said that it was all along. And a lot of people like me, Senator Ted Cruz, for example, was leading the charge on this, leading the way, telling the truth. He actually read the bill, which was, 6,000 pages long or something. Nobody actually read it. Obama certainly didn't read it. Nobody read it. But the Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable. And I want to get into this because it's quite amazing. The great people at Newsbusters Media Research Center did a wonderful item on it. Washington Post Editorial Board says Obamacare, quote, was never actually affordable, end quote. And they get into it and say, hey, wait a minute, but didn't the Washington Post tell us how great this was and we should all be celebrating and it's wonderful? And then very casually, 15 years later, when the damage is deeply rooted in our culture and our government and our tax structure and everything else, our health care has been demolished by the commies that call themselves liberals. And then they very blithely say, well, Obamacare, but it was never affordable, never actually affordable. Don't be ridiculous. And the Washington Post, and this is the Washington Post story that started it all. Government shutdown over ACA. That's the ironically named Affordable Care Act. That's Obamacare. And he's happy to take credit for it. He should take the blame for it now. But this is about being lied to for 15 years on this gigantic macro government takeover, with the Washington Post in bed, naked, all lubed up, with the Democrat Party rolling around, writhing around in some kind of a neoprene sleeping bag. And they lied to us. And I was here telling you at the time, as many others were, I was not alone in this, but people on the side of truth were throwing a flag on the play and saying, no, let's talk seriously about what this is. And the news media shouted you down and called you racist because Obama was black. I think he still is more. He's African-American, right? Isn't that correct? And government shutdown, the Washington Post, government shutdown over ACA subsidies demands more fiscal seriousness. This is the next Washington Post story on it. First, Obamacare was never affordable. Then government shutdown over ACA, but you told us yesterday that it was not over Obamacare, and now you very casually say that the Democrats shut the government down because they need to steal another $1.5 trillion to fund their harebrained government takeover of our health care so they will have total dominance over the population like they do in authoritarian countries while they yell that everybody around them is authoritarian for wanting to enforce immigration law, the bunch of fascists that they are. So I want to get into that because it's ooh, baby, it's a wild world. Let me tell you. Now, let me just share some headlines with you because National Panhandler Radio, suckling on the taxpayer teat, where they do terrible, awful shows like, what's that show called, Michael? Some Things Considered. I think it's called Some Things Considered, where they have a crew of 33 people doing that, I think a 3-hour show, 33 people. Here we are doing our show for 3 hours. It's me and Michael Piercy, and Jeff Wolf is on phones today. And we don't even have the same person on phones every day. But Jeff is here. You can talk to Jeff, and he's great. And we do it by the seat of our pants, and we do a much better show, and we tell the truth, and we don't lie and murmur like we're on some kind of a sedative and tell you untruths that make you want to say blah, blah, blah. Expletives deleted. All right, so here's the National Panhandler Radio headline. Behind the shutdown was a fight over ACA health care. Wait a minute. That's not been the reporting at all. And when they say ACA, of course, they're talking about Obamacare. And National Panhandler Radio says, what's behind the health care fight that led to the government shutdown? Well, it's you guys stealing again on the order of $1.5 trillion and lining the pockets of your political allies so they can buy beach houses and golden Mercedes-Benz station wagons, and they can, give money to Democrats because it's all a corrupt circle fest in a hot tub. It's the Democrat Party. But now, suddenly, the shutdown is over Obamacare? Now, that's the National Panhandler Radio. Let me go to Medicare Rights Center. Federal government shuts down over health care. What? How can that be? It shuts down over health care subsidies. That's Medicare rights. But that's not what this is about, except it is what it's about. And the news media is lying to us again. And the shutdown conversation no one wants. That's the Washington Post story. Partisan bickering. It's not partisan bickering. It's serious conversation about $1.5 trillion, you frauds at the Washington Post. Partisan bickering overshadows real questions about taxes and the size of America's government. Well, that's what the Republicans have been talking about for quite some time now, isn't it? And that is the way that it was presented by the Republicans, and the Democrats lied about it, and the Washington Post lied about it, and then they very casually act like, oh, everybody knew all along it was really about Obamacare. The government shutdown's about Obamacare? NBC fake news. I get it goes on and on. These people and the Associated Press, Democrats' health care demands are at the heart of the government shutdown. But wait a minute. This is about socialism. This is about redistribution of wealth. That's what this is really all about. And the answer is yes, that's what this is really all about. And Barack Obama is he was mentored by a communist named Frank Marshall Davis, and he was steeped in the teachings of Saul Alinsky, the communist revolutionary who academia loved and still loves. Hillary Clinton actually served under, if I can phrase it that way, Saul Alinsky himself. And now the government and the news media, they're acting like, oh, everybody knew all along this was about Obamacare. It's about funding Obamacare. All right, you people are the biggest liars that Western civilization has ever seen. Just amazing. Make a lie so big that no one would dare to not believe it, as their boy Joseph Goebbels famously said. And National Panhandler Radio, a fight over health policy drove the current federal government shutdown. Why didn't you say that in the first place? At issue is the cost of premiums being subsidized by you and me for health care plans people buy on the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare marketplaces. Really, that's what the government shutdown is? Because you can turn on any news station and watch all day long, and that'll never be what they're talking about. Enhanced tax credits, that's redistribution of wealth, for these premiums expire at the end of the year. And that's because that was in the big, beautiful bill. And this is what the Republicans have been saying all along. It's what John Thune has been saying. It's what the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has been saying. And the Democrats shout you down, and that means the media. They shout you down because they're the biggest liars that you ever met, unless you're, like a street hooker, which a lot of Democrats are. But that's another thing. So enhanced tax credits premium expire at the end of the year. Since 2021, these have kept ACA plans affordable for people who get their insurance this way. They get their insurance this way, don't you see? Earlier this week, Democrats in the Senate refused to vote for the Republican short-term funding bill that did not include an extension of the enhanced premium tax credit. Listen to the language that these weasels use, these sharp-toothed Washington weasels. What's it called? What's the terminology? The enhanced premium tax credits? We need to extend the enhanced premium tax credits. Again, back to the street hooker. So why do they matter? The panhandlers say. Just amazing. And then they go on to spin it for the Democrat Party because they're, suckling on the taxpayer teeth, and they're doing the work of the Democrat Party because that's what they do. Now let me go to the great people at Newsbusters and the Media Research Center, Here's the headline there. Joseph Vasquez, writing for MRC Business. There's the headline. 15 years later? ? Washington Post editorial board says Obamacare, quote, was never actually affordable. And I knew that 15 years ago. I knew that 10 years ago and 5 years ago. I knew that last year. And I said it here. But the Washington Post has been lying for 15 years on behalf of the Democrat Party about this massive multi-trillion-dollar government takeover of health care in the most important country in the world because the commies are like monkeypox. They sneak up on you, don't they, Michael? Then suddenly monkeypox everywhere. Liberals everywhere. So here is Joseph Vasquez, Media Research Center, MRC Business. Hold on to your britches because you're not going to believe this one. The Washington Post editorial board just admitted that the so-called Affordable Care Act, one of the most notorious pieces of Obama-era legislation foisted upon consumers by legislators and the liberal media, as the saving grace of American healthcare, turned out to be an expensive mess. The Washington Post tried to play both sides of the fence and ongoing government shutdown, standoff with Republicans and Democrats, the latter of which demanded Republicans agreed to extend the COVID-era insurance subsidies without proposing any way to pay for it. Sure, right? And the Washington Post. Then the Washington Post ran one of the biggest plot twists ever to hit American politics, at least in the last 15 years. Quote, the real problem is the Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable, end quote. Now, hang on. Just hang on to your kufi there because, nope, your eyes didn't deceive you. The architects of former President Barack Obama's 2010 signature achievement, wrote the Washington Post, assumed that risk pools would be bigger than they turned out to be. As a result, policies cost more than expected. No kidding. Well, I explained that then because my monthly health care premiums with Blue Cross Blue Shield went from $320 a month to $1,320 a month. My Best Girls Blue Cross Blue Shield went from $230 a month to $1,200 a month. So now it's $2,500 a month for us when it was $500 a month for us. And I explained that here. And then Democrats lied to me and called me names because back to that street thing. I got it back to the street hooker thing. Aren't they amazing? And there's a lot more. And the Democrats, the lie is so big between Chuck Schumer, the Democrats on the Hill, and the news media, but what's the difference, There's not a lot of daylight between them. It's how do you separate them? With a crowbar. With a crowbar. That's an old joke about the Saudi military. How do you separate the men from the boys with a crowbar? But that's same thing with the media and the Democrats lubed up in a Lucite sleeping bag, the Democrat Party. I've got more on this. And then, of course, the second anniversary of the October 7th massacre in Israel. What are the Democrats doing about that today? I'll explain. And boy, oh boy, violence, another day of Democrat violence across the country, including bounties being put on the heads of federal agents who the Democrats want to make sure don't wear masks in public. Oh, yeah, and more authoritarian fascist Biden Democrat revelations yesterday out of the Senate and a whistleblower at the FBI that the FBI was targeting Republican senators under Joe Biden for years, targeting only Republican senators for their authoritarian communist fascist takeover. Let's go, Michael. And today, the anniversary of the massacre in Israel, and Democrats are protesting in favor of Hamas in the United States. Let's go to the phones, Michael. Let's go to Greg calling from Rockville, Maryland. Gregory, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you, sir. Love the show.
Hey, Greg, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I called yesterday, but I had to drop off. But you're absolutely spot on about Obamacare. It was written by the big insurance companies. That's why the big insurance companies, if you look, their stock has appreciated, has gone up 4 times as fast as the S&P 500 since Obamacare was signed into law. And it is truly a subsidy to these massive insurers. People are paying for plans and paying for things that they premiums into plans for things that they will never use. And, it's interesting. These people, these far leftists, they celebrate Luigi Mangione. He shoots and murders the CEO of United Healthcare in cold blood. But then these Democrats in Congress want to subsidize United Healthcare to the tune of billions of our dollars. And so it's just this cognitive incoherence in policy. And you're absolutely right. It's bankrupting the country slowly. It's just another layer of entitlement, and entitlements are already bankrupting the country. And then also one more thing, like you said, like universal health care necessitates a police state. I don't understand why this doesn't get through. Maybe it's the intention of the left, but universal health care necessitates a police state. There's no way they're going to let someone smoke cigarettes or smoke cigars, when they have total control over, or even smoke marijuana, when they have total control over the healthcare system. The healthcare system's going bankrupt.
That is a fact, Jack. You've cracked the code, Greg.
Is Obamacare a winner or a loser politically?
It's called the Affordable Care Act. It's called the Affordable Care Act. Affordable. Affordable. There's a reason. Affordable. The reason they changed the name of it is because they wanted to get away from the word affordable. And that's why I'm patient with some of these comments. Whatever it is, it's infinitely more affordable than the path that we're on.
Now, that, of course, was Nancy Pelosi in 2014 when Obamacare was being debated and the Republicans were telling the truth about it. And Nancy Pelosi, pathological liar that she is, I bet she was heavily invested in the healthcare insurance companies, I'll bet. They didn't assassinate any CEOs at Pelosi's house. No, they had dinner at their mansion on the Hill where that illegal alien hit her husband on the head with a hammer and got life in prison without the possibility of parole. But never mind that. You're going to assassinate 3 Supreme Court justices. You're outside Brett Kavanaugh's home. You get an 8-year sentence, and you'll be out in 5 because now you're a lady named Sophie, right, at the Democrat Party. But that was Nancy Pelosi demonstrating, the old Stalinist thing, the old Nazi thing, the Socialist Workers' Party thing. A lie told once remains a lie. A lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. And that's what Nancy Pelosi was doing there. repeating the lie 1,000 times.
Did I hear you correctly say that perhaps he was influenced by Gurgel and the Third Reich in terms of telling a big lie? I just want to make sure that's what I heard you say.
That's what you heard him say. That's Gurgel. That is MSDNC. Isn't he amazing? Just great. The Reverend Al Sharpton. You know that the Reverend Al Sharpton was ordained a minister when he was either 9 years old or 10 years old. He was either 9 years old or 10 years old. I can't tell you specifically because he doesn't know. He has no idea. One of the biggest charlatans in a century, and the Democrat Party grows them in petri dishes. They are amazing. And Pelosi lying, and it's affordable. It's affordable. It's affordable. And then yesterday, the Washington Post, we all learned from the Washington Post that, the thing is about the Affordable Care Act. The real problem, Washington Post now, quoting the Washington Post, the real problem is that the Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable. What did Nancy Pelosi lie about 1,000 times like her boy Gurgel, as the Reverend Al says?
Affordable, 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 affordable.
See, you repeat the lie enough times and it becomes the truth in her twisted, corrupt little brain. And I'll bet that she and her husband were laying in huge amounts of cash into the, United Healthcare. That was long before Luigi Mangione, a hero of the Democrat Party, assassinated the CEO, murdered him on the sidewalk in New York. Affordable. And now the Washington Post very casually says the real problem with the Affordable Care Act is that it was never actually affordable. Wow. Never. And it's the Washington Post. This is not Breitbart saying it was never affordable. It's the Washington Post. And they just shrug and they're saying, yeah, whatever. We don't care. That's not something they care about. Aren't they amazing? A lie so big. A lie so big. Just extraordinary. Womp, womp, womp. All right, so I wanted to share that with you because that's what the government shutdown is really about. The government shutdown is about stealing another $1.5 trillion to fund Obamacare. Obama, who was mentored by a communist, who was, rules for radicals, Saul Alinsky guy, a radical leftist, and the government takeover of health care, as our brilliant first caller was saying, Greg, requires essentially authoritarianism. It requires a total government smother of your life and your family's life, and they can take away your life at any time. That whole right to life thing, they were never for that. The left was never for that. They harvest the organs of 1 million innocent babies a year. Speaking of which, another thing, I've got a lot to get to, and I should start moving along, but the extraordinary things that we have going on today, because it's the second anniversary of the genocidal massacre by the Democrat Friends of Hamas, the radical Islamic jihadi terrorist organization that's hell-bent on wiping Israel and the Jews off the face of the earth from the river to the sea, while the Democrats are training college students in the United States to chant from the river to the sea. And what do you think they're doing on this second anniversary? Quite remarkable. And ABC New York, ABC 7 in New York with the headline, New York City prepares for protests, memorials to mark anniversary of October 7th. But in New York, you see, they're all leftists. They're about to elect a communist who's an Islamist, a jihadi, to become the mayor of New York. And then the Third World War began. And they're celebrating the massacre, and they're praising Hamas and the poor Palestinians. It's like in 1945, the poor Nazis stopped bombing Dresden. What did they ever do anyway? The Democrat Party is on the side of the Nazis and the jihadis, and they're on the side of Hamas. And it's true in England. It's true. I want to get back to that because Western civilization is in trouble, and the left is here to choke the life out of Western civilization. Also, I expect this, the Jerusalem Post. Hamas celebrates 2 years since October 7th, calls the terror attacks a glorious day. A glorious day. And the irony is, so do the Democrats. And if you're Jewish and you're a Democrat, you need a brain scan. I don't know if Obamacare will cover that or not. You might have to pay out of pocket. But you should check, see if there's anything going on in there, any brainwave activity, because it's possible that all that has come to a screeching halt. All right, before I get into all that good stuff, let's get back to the phones because we've got, we've got a lot to cover here. Let's go to Mike, calling from Middletown, New Jersey. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, thanks for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, you bet, Mike.
Hey, one thing we are overlooking is the fact that Chief Justice Roberts deserves blame for the shutdown. Recall, his vote, he changed at the last minute in the 2012 case. He saved Obamacare, particularly the individual penalty, which he deemed was a tax under the taxing clause, even though Congress explicitly denied using the word tax. They called it a penalty. So if anyone deserves blame besides the Democrats, it's Chief Justice Roberts.
Very, very valid point. And I got to tell you, I was talking to Jeff. We were just, Jeff and Michael and I were talking about this a few minutes ago because it's only three of us. We don't have 33 people. We're not on the taxpayer T tier. But Jeff said that when Obamacare came along, he didn't have health insurance. And he was fined hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars by the federal government that they demanded he pay. And it was mandatory. It wasn't voluntary because you got to keep in mind, Mike, that the left doesn't care what you do as long as it's mandatory. And that's where we are. That's where we're now. But you're right. The Chief Justice Roberts in the Supreme Court had an opportunity to say, no, you can't mandate all of this. And the Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Roberts, went the wrong way on that one. You're 100% right, Michael. So what do we do now,
Yes,
Mike?
Well, now we hold out. Listen. It's now day 7 of the Obamacare shutdown. Just keep holding out. Chuck needs these federal subsidies to keep it going. Keep putting the blame on Chuck and keep using the memes. It's working.
Well, you're 100% right. You just reminded me that yesterday we used a Chuck Schumer soundbite on this, and it was over the weekend, and none of the news media noticed this. We played this yesterday here. But here's Chuck Schumer over the weekend yelling and pounding the table with his lizard tongue squirting in and out of his skinny city lips. And this was Schumer kind of accidentally giving away the story, but the news media ignored it.
We ought to be talking about the real issue here.
What is it?
Which is that we have a health care crisis in America caused by the Republicans.
The Republicans?
They barreled us towards a shutdown because they don't want to deal with that crisis.
Now, Mike, I got to say, that guy is Joseph Goebbels. He is the lies are so gigantic. These people are so shameless. They're such horrible, filthy liars and criminals stealing trillions of dollars because they're in a position to steal trillions of dollars and easily hundreds of billions. And we're in a healthcare crisis created by the Republicans when now, again, their bootlicks at the Washington Post just yesterday declared that the real problem, and with the government shutdown, it's the Washington Post writing about the government shutdown, the real problem is that the Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable. And so they're coming back for another $1.5 trillion and lying their lizard butts off to steal another $1 trillion. How do you think we got to be $37 trillion in debt? I talked about this the other day, Mike, too, because I've accessed the Internet here. I don't know if you have that yet, but the Internet, it's kind of amazing. I went and I looked it up. Chuck Schumer was first sworn in as a member of the House of Representatives before the Senate in January of 1981, having been elected in November of 1980. And when he was sworn in as a member of the House, the national debt was $998 billion, less than $1 trillion, right, when he was sworn into the House of Representatives. Now it's $37 trillion. So on his watch, 36 trillion of the 37 trillion were accumulated. Of those dollars were accumulated under Chuck Schumer being in elected office on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I think Supermax is too good for him.
So do I. He's a repulsive gentleman.
He is.
Unfortunately, I used to live in his state. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you want to save the affordable, if you want to save healthcare, how about we have the Singapore method? Instead of doing these subsidies, give everybody who is not on a plan with an employer an individual account. You fund it each year. The government could fund it that way. It would be cheaper than doing the way they're doing it now. You cut out the insurance companies. It'd be a much cheaper plan.
Did you live in Singapore?
I did not, but I read about it in the Journal when this was being debated back in 2009 and 2010.
And you remember it.
I do, yes, sir.
That's amazing.
I have a pretty good memory.
That's amazing because, Jake Tapper doesn't remember any of this, never knew it in the first place. Our news anchors, Chunk Todd and the rest, they don't remember any of this. They have no memory for any of this. And you know what? They will glance at the Washington Post piece that, talking about the government shutdown, says the real problem is that the Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable. And they've already forgotten that. If they even saw it over the weekend or yesterday, they've already forgotten it. Our news media is the most corrupt institution in America. That's a terrible thing.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are, Chris, as you always say. You're the best.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the call. Great stuff. And you're right, Chief Justice Roberts had a chance to bring this to a screeching halt. It's a giant socialist or communist redistribution of wealth proposition. It's closer to the Socialist Workers' Party of Germany under Adolf Hitler, because they allow the industries to continue to exist and operate as long as they're under the hobnail boot of the Democrat Party, of the state, of the government, the permanent bureaucracy. Aren't they amazing? Great stuff, Michael. Thank you. And there are giant stories all over the place just falling out of the trees, like the flying monkeys in The Wizard of Oz are like Democrats at one of those monkeypox. What do they call them? Where they all get together and have sex in a field or something. What's that called? They have those things, the scrums, or they have those thing where they spread their various venereal diseases. These people, they're quite amazing. Yes, they are. Oh, but yeah, big breaking news yesterday when I was headed down to Newsmax yesterday, collecting more news as I was driving. The FBI targeted Republican members of the Senate, and no Democrat members of the Senate, but they targeted a whole bunch of Republican members of the Senate. And I want to get to that and share that with you as well, because our government in Washington is a corrupt third world style government, to the extent that the Democrats have seized control of the permanent bureaucracy, the deep state. They are third world, banana republic, lefty corrupt, because they're the left. They're not liberals. Isn't that amazing? Also, smoking pot and driving your car. A new study out about that. It's kind of like drunk driving, but stone driving. You think maybe you'll be real mellow and go 15 miles an hour in a 25 zone. But that's not what this study says. I've got that coming up. And the Latin Kings, a famous gang, want to give them credit, where credit is due. Famous gang, the Latin Kings, put out a bounty on the head of an ICE commander, Immigration Customs Enforcement, just as has been prophesied, as has been warned. And the Democrat Party, they're not on the side of civilization. We've got that coming up. The government shutdown, the violence of the Democrats loving Hamas on the anniversary of the genocidal massacre in Israel. The lies are so big that no one would dare to not believe them.
I have to be the most inept charlatan in the country.
All right, we are back, and I have a lot of stories that really got me going this morning, I've got to say. Democrat violence, the FBI targeting Republican members of the Senate, just like the fascist, authoritarian, totalitarian. They call everybody else these names, and then you discover it's them projecting again. Let's go back to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Craig, calling from Gaithersburg, Maryland. Craig, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, I wanted to jump in here and remind your listeners of a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Gruber. Jonathan Gruber is a professor of economics at MIT, and he's been credited for being the key architect of not only the 2006 Massachusetts healthcare reform, oftentimes referred to as Romney Care, but also Obamacare. And back in 2014, there was a video with audio, of course, that surfaced that exposed what was going on behind the scenes. Jonathan Gruber, quote, said, lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, of the American voter or whatever.
Oh, the NSA is skipping your phone out. I think the FBI and the NSA are going after your phone. But Michael Piercy's making faces at me, and I can tell, I can read his face. And I think he's got audio of Jonathan Gruber here that you're talking about.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to getting the thing to pass.
Is that what you're talking about there, Jonathan? Or excuse me, Craig, that's the Jonathan audio that you're talking about?
It is, and he went on to say if the CBO scores the individual mandate as taxes, the bill dies. And one more quote. If you had a law that made it explicit that healthy people are going to pay in and sick people are going to get subsidies, it would have not passed.
I think your phone is skipping out again, but if only healthy people paid.
In terms of risk-rated subsidies, if you had a law which said healthy people are going to pay in, it made explicit that healthy people pay in and sick people get money, it would not have passed.
Yeah, so they lied to us and the lack of transparency. And he goes on talking about the ignorance of the American people and the economic ignorance of the American people.
Look, I wish Mark was right. We can make it all transparent, but I'd rather have this law than not.
So he's bragging, the MIT professor, Jonathan Gruber. Is that like Hans Gruber and he's going to blow up Nakatomi Plaza? I think he's holding hostages, isn't he? This is the Democrat Party. This is the left. They're not liberals at all. They're the left. And these people are here to destroy Western civilization, and they're here to destroy capitalism. It's the Cloward and Piven strategy, another campus plot conspiracy by a couple of Francis Fox Piven, one of the college professors, how to bankrupt the United States and topple capitalism worldwide by destroying capitalism in the United States. And you know how you do that? By having a national debt of $37 trillion, for one thing. And it was under $1 trillion when Chuck Schumer came to Washington. Isn't that amazing? I've got the FBI, criminal FBI activity coming up.